Hi, I'm Natasha.
And I'm Penny.
And welcome to the WIBs. Today we have a very special guest with us. Penny, do you want to introduce this lovely lady?
She's a lady that I know and love. And she is Adrianne Dimitrakakis.
Oh! Wow. Now, just for some context, how long have you known this lovely lady,
Yes,
Penny?
answer that question, Penny.
Forever. No, I've known you now. Is it nearly been 20
We're
years?
nearly due for our 20-year
20-year
anniversary back tattoos.
Yes, we are going to get them. They're going to be beautiful. They'll match the ones on our ankles, but not drawn by us when we're drunk.
Yeah,
Which
so-
is exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I know. But imagine what they would look like if they were.
I don't want to choose that in our lives because that could be upsetting for some people. Like I don't
Lammy
think-
mostly.
Mostly lammy. Yes.
Really, really happy
But
for me.
who are you? You're Adrianne Dimitrakakis.
Yes.
That is your full name. You are an artist extraordinaire and owner of Atlas a Collective. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We're so excited to have you on. We spoke about it briefly when Penny was doing a panelist, and I was like, it seems like the most perfect. You are such a boss lady in everything that you do, and it feels so weird because I know you guys have been friends for so long. So to put that kind of eye onto you like that, it's like, oh my God, that's my bestie, and it's so nice to be able to bring you on and have you here. And let's get straight into it. Do you want to kind of tell us a bit about your background first, so anyone that doesn't know you can know all about you?
Sure. The life story starts here. So I guess getting out into uni and that sort of thing from there, not from birth. We won't go to it.
You can go for it. It's fine.
Into this world. Anyway, so I went to uni and I studied communication design, I actually went to TAFE. I went to TAFE and did that for like 3 years or something, and then I crossed over into the last final year of uni and wrapped up and wanted to go out into the world and be a graphic designer. Which happened probably after maybe 6 months to probably a year later. And then found myself in a job in Melbourne because I grew up in Melbourne. So it was out in Mitcham for like a shoe company.
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to say where I worked, but if you went on my LinkedIn, you'll know exactly where it is. So little puzzle for everyone. So I was there for about 6 months, and I was sort of like, I was just sort of at that time in my life, just like not, I don't know, the space was just not where aligned for me, and I was like very much like, shit. I'm out of uni. I got to be here for like 1 to 2 years because everyone's asking for 1 to 2 years experience when you're straight out of uni. So I don't know where those things are going to appear from, but
they just come out of nowhere. Yep.
Yeah, and then I ended up. My workspace was down in the basement, and there was a window that was about like 20 centimeters up. Like I felt like I was a bit in prison. I was just like, I'm stuck.
Just create your own little den. It's fine.
You weren't allowed to play music. It was just like, I remember just like gently one day having like just the softest music.
Wild.
And someone was like, can you please turn this racket down? And I was like, please, God, help. I'm going to fucking die here. But anyway, so then I was
Your career journey so far sounds hysterical.
really horrible. Yeah, it really wasn't that bad. But I worked in a surf shop for like 5 years with some of my best friends and just had a ball. And
That's
then
unreal.
I remember having the kind of moment going, I want to do this sort of thing. Like I really want to design like these sort of campaigns or whatever it is. Anyway, and then I remember I was going to apply for a job down the coast with a surf company, and I was like, I don't have the experience. I don't have all that stuff. I'm not even going to bother.
Yeah.
And I previously, like a year before that, had emailed them and just said, hey, if you're looking for anyone, like I would love to be a part of the team. And they were like, yeah, we'll keep it on file. I'm like, They did keep it on file. And then they actually approached me and were like, hey, we have a role, like a junior designer role. Do you want to come and
That's
work for us? And I was like, fuck yeah, I do.
You're like, yes,
get me out of prison. Get me down to the beach.
Get out of prison card. Yeah.
So anyway, no, it was just sort of like you go to uni and you're kind of like, I can't wait to get out into my role and all this sort of thing. And then you get there and you're like, actually, this is sort of where I want to be or whatever. And, you learn what
change.
you learn.
Yeah, you don't realise that change is so important.
And mine was all probably more of a life path. Like I grew up in Melbourne, but I wanted to live by the
Yeah,
beach.
you
I
were
wanted
born
to
to
be
be at
by
the
the
beach.
water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was watching Blue Crush every single weekend. For,
Yes, absolutely.
Really into it.
And that is who I want to be. Yeah.
I
yeah.
don't want to be, stuck in Melbourne on a hot day, which is one of my kryptonites, which
Yeah.
Penny will know. I'm like,
Yeah,
it's
she
hot.
really
I
does
need to go.
She really can't
Right
sit
now.
still when the sun is out.
When
But
the
I
sun's
think
out,
so.
yeah.
You're there and you're having this amazing job. You're working in an industry that you're loving and you're really enjoying. But when do you make the move from being, I guess, working for somebody else to going out on your own and then, I guess, really exploring your art and your own brand?
Yeah. So from going down to the beach, I worked for that surf company for 5 years, and I got to travel. I got to do all these things. I worked my way up into promotions, which was awesome. And to what was almost like my dream job. I was like a senior designer for a surf company, traveling on photo shoots, going to like Tahiti, Maldives, America. Like I was traveling every month for like 6 months, 7 months.
So cool.
It was amazing. And I was gone for like 2 weeks or, 10 days, and I'd come back and I'd be back for 2 weeks, and then I was gone again. And it was just, but I loved it, but it kind of started to get maybe a little bit chaotic, and that was like my dream job. And I was like, this is what I want to do. And then at that same time, as I was traveling, it was sort of speaking to me with sort of how Atlas was, like, the travel element, the sort of, like when I went away, I took a notebook and I was drawing maps and just taking photos of everything, taking film photos of everything. And sort of I started to create, my artwork that was getting inspired from doing all these things. And even for that job, it was, we're talking about like, travel and surfing, and you're using the language, you're looking at the imagery, you're talking about with like-minded people. It kind of married up with what I was doing on the side, which was doing all the drawing and that sort of thing. So I started drawing all these maps, and that's just what I love doing, and that idea of travel. And I did like a paid post with she's a Byron influencer.
Okay.
At the time, 2017, $300 for a post.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
And that literally set me up for commissions for like
Really?
7 months after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was she
Yeah.
big? Did she have a big following?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was probably, the engagement and all that was just better, it was more authentic, and
Oh yeah. It was a different world back then.
yeah. So I sent her a map of like I think it was Greece, and she got engaged in Milos, and that's when I was doing
Oh,
like all these
yeah.
maps. So I did a little thing on there of just where they got engaged and sent it. Like I asked her if she wanted. She's like, yeah, I'd love that, and she posted that. And like even for a couple of years after, people were like, oh, I saw this and whatever. And
Really?
it's
That's
just
so
like,
powerful.
wow.
That's really powerful.
So from that, which I think it's a bit different now, it's so oversaturated now.
Yeah.
But from that put me in the fork in the road to choose and go, do I want to stay in this role?
Yeah.
Which was amazing. But I do feel like I was sort of like, and even just living down the coast in Melbourne, Victoria, I was sort of just ready to do something different and live somewhere warm.
yeah.
And also like trying to do my art, I just felt like I wanted to sort of, so I really wanted to move to Byron.
Yeah.
And I sort of was like, well, I'm just going to go and just take a chance on this art like venture. And I've got 6-7 months worth of work. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good position to be in, like saved a chunk of money from my full-time job. And I was like, okay, if I can reach this amount, I'm just going to go and if I come back in 6 months, whatever. Like,
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that way of thinking. It's kind of like when the hardest thing for people to do is to take that step and quit. But it's kind of like worst case, you get a job. Like you go back to a job. Like it's not as if there aren't jobs out there that will take you. You're extremely talented, but it's like, let's have a crack. And if it doesn't work, let's go back to the job.
Exactly.
So it's a job.
And someone even said to me, they're like, even if you work in a bar or even if you work whatever, if that helps you do this goal, do it. Like, and you never know where that's going to get. And that's what I did. I ended up working because I was like, I can go back into graphic design, but that's going to be demanding again.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't I just get something in town? Like I've moved here, I've met friends, but I want to meet more people. I want to be in town. I don't want to be stuck in my studio. I've just moved to Byron. Why do I want to be stuck here? Like doing all this. I want to kind of mix it up a bit more. So I ended up working at the Atlantic in Byron, which is like a beautiful guest housing accommodation. And I met beautiful people. I met Kim, who like is the creative. She's the owner with her husband, and like has this incredible creative vision for the Atlantic. And then from being there and talking to her, and eventually like I got my artwork into the Atlantic, which helped.
That's
part of the business.
unreal.
So it's the same thing. It's like you never know what something that seems like it's like, oh, it's just a part-time job.
Yeah, yeah.
I also met some really good friends through there that, you know, it's just you never know who you're going to meet, and it's sort of where things take you and who you end up working with again later down the line. And
I think
it's just about opening that door, right?
Yeah.
Like
it's a really good, I think it's a really good example to be able to tell people who are thinking about going out on their own and pursuing a creative career and passion, because you do need to be able to kind of take that leap of faith to be able to say, okay, I'm going to go into this area, this industry, and we don't exactly know how it's going to pan out. And you know, you get a bit of traction on social media, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to convert into a career overnight. So I think the fact that you're explaining and talking about, this is what I've done in my career, these are the journeys I've taken to be able to kind of get myself and build out my personal brand and where I am today. Anything can be an opportunity if you allow it to be. I think that's a really cool like point in your career that I think maybe people don't realize there's such a pivotal moment in it.
It would have been scary, I'm sure. It's like I always say, like, it's like closing. It's like when you're in a relationship, right? And you're in a relationship, you know that it's not the right relationship. It's a similar with your career. When you're in the spot and you're like, this just isn't right anymore. Until you make that leap and leave the person or leave that environment, you're not opening yourself up to the opportunities. And until you walk away from that, whatever it is that isn't serving you anymore, that's when things just, and I know it sounds like so like woo-woo, like things just come to you. It's not always like that. I get it. But you will open up yourself to more opportunities than if you are in a place that you're not happy in.
Exactly. And I could have definitely had stayed there and like I loved all the people I worked with. I loved traveling and doing all those things. But as I started to progress into the art, I was like, I can't actually be away for this amount of time. And I was doing like crazy long hours.
Yeah, yeah.
And to the point, Penny would know, like I was just like, I just need to get through the next couple of weeks. I just need to get through the next couple of weeks. And it was like, I loved both things, but it's like, you know, if they're dangling off a cliff, which one are you going to choose?
Who are you going to save? Yeah.
Which Atlas was always going to win. And I ended up doing that same sort of situation, not same situation, but I got a job with another surf company probably during COVID.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I kind of miss marketing. So I was doing Atlas. So I left, 2018? So end of 2018 and about, end of 2021, sort of mid 2021. Yeah. I got a job with another surf company up in Queensland. And they were in Queensland. I was northern New South Wales. So borders, you needed a permit, all that stuff. It was taking me
COVID and everything.
Through COVID. So it was taking me 2 hours, sometimes 2.5 hours to get to work. And then I'd be driving back. And they were like, oh, yeah, we'd come in for 3 days a week, or, you know, and then it was going to, as things were opening, I was like, oh, might be 4 days now or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So I was there. I ended up being there for 5 months.
Okay.
And I loved all the people there, but I ended up, it was one of those things again. And I was like, I kind of miss marketing. I kind of miss like being in the surf industry a little bit and working on campaigns and just that bit more of a stable income through like COVID. And Byron was going through all the lockdowns in Sydney and then Queensland, all that. And then it got to like the check-in period of that role, and I had been staying back at that role and then driving home 2 hours later, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I'm spending all my money in petrol, getting, you know, driving for 2 hours to get here. And I was like, if I really love the role, I'll move.
Yeah.
And I'll move to Queensland, and if it's the right thing, that's what I'll do. But then I was just before that happened, I booked a Airbnb and I created all this new artwork, which is what all the new paintings are. And I had this vision. I've been sitting on it through COVID, and I was like, I really want to do this. I really believe in it. And just as I started, I don't know if we went for a walk in the park, me and Penny.
And COVID walk?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
So illegal. When Penny's wedding, I like flew down from Byron into like a lockdown for Penny's wedding that couldn't go ahead.
Yeah.
Fifth time lucky, was
number
it?
4 or something. And
good chat though. In the park that day.
Well, I can see it in my mind now. And I remember being like, I feel like I'm back in that fork in the road. And I had like a full breakdown. And I was like, I feel like I'm just at this new art that I have, like I believe in, I can see it, I'm creating it. I'm so excited for it. It's just within my reach. But then there's something else that I really want to. And I was like, because it was more than just a job. It was like this particular brand, I really admired their campaigns, and I was like, I think it'd be cool to work for and, you know, learn so many more things again. And it was almost probably a little bit of that safety net too.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like if
Yeah,
the art
yeah.
thing didn't work out, but, you know, I could probably do this and it'd still be an amazing role.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, so when it sort of, came to the check-in period of like the end of that year, and I was doing all this other freelance stuff and trying to wrap it up, and it's just so hard with freelance to do that because things can get strung out. And I was just, working so much. And then my work-life balance was just all over the place. And I was sort of thought to myself, I'm like, if you got to drop one, which one are you going to choose? Is it going to be Atlas or is it going to be this business? And I was like, well, Atlas is going to win every single time. And at this point in my life anyway, like who knows, things can change in the future. But I'm like, I'm so close to this. And it kicked me, like it kicked myself in my ass. Like it winded up me to go for it. Go harder ever before with Atlas and your artwork and your painting and everything, and make the choice and do it better than you thought you ever could. Just try and go like as gung-ho as you can on that because you can't do both anymore. And I tried to talk to the business and I'm like, could I do freelance? Could I do this? No, it's one of those roles. Like senior role, you're either all in or you're out.
Yeah. And I feel
Which
like
is so fair.
Which is fair on both sides.
100%. And I feel like I definitely had to go in to do that because there was so many things that I need to go back and just, it's like a little, you could do this, but you're just about to go down this road. Just kick it a little bit further and you'll get there.
Yeah.
Which I'm so glad I did because it was funny, like even just in the role, like I remember being like just things weren't working out. Like everything was just that little bit harder. Like it was just sort of, and it's probably because my head wasn't 100% in it because I still had a whole nother business that I was taking care of on the side. Yeah. And I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to do these paintings, living this life that I currently was, which was commuting for 2 hours there and then for an hour back.
I think that's really, it's cool that you're talking about this though, because I do think, especially when people are looking to start their own business, the idea and the appeal of the safety net is such a thing that we think about. And it is a real thing because you're like, yes, I want to start my own business. And whether it's in the creative industry or otherwise, there is that element of like the cushioning around you before you take that leap into what you can build out your life to be and your career to be.
Yeah.
And I think that by doing that, I think it's great to be able to talk about it because you show people that it's not always linear in terms of how you go in and out of your career in life. Like sometimes you might want to dip back in and see if a 9 to 5, I guess, more traditional career is correct for you, or if you can balance that with a freelance lifestyle, or if you know that this is what your passion is, this is where you want to be, and this is how you want to build out your career. Because I think that people think that freelancing, it sounds amazing, or having your own business sounds fantastic, being your own boss sounds fantastic in the moment. But then when you get there, you realize the challenges, I guess, the level of demand that you have to place on yourself to be able to get things done. Yeah. How are you motivated? Everything to do with that. And I think that you kind of went the other way once you started working for another person again to realize, no, actually, this is the direction I need to go in. This is what I want to do.
And I had something there. Like I had this vision that I was like, I think this is going to be really good. I'm so close. Do I pull it tighter or do I am I happy to let it go for another 6 months to a year? And I just was like, no, you've already been sitting on it for a couple of years for this idea. You've done, like I booked the Airbnb. I did 3 artworks out of that I was like, you know what? Which was the Rio Sun, the mangoes, and then I think I did the Tulum one, which I actually haven't released. But it was that process of, doing that. And then the reason I also think that happened is like I ended up earning a good bit of cash for that, which I was, working 2 jobs, and then save that money. And then the next following year, one day there was like an art residency that I was been following in Greece. And I got an email saying early bird like thing for June. I was like, I'm just going to apply and see what happens. And I applied, and like that was at 9 a.m. And then at 4 p.m. it was like, congratulations, you're in. I was like, oh.
What?
That's big
awesome.
Bad sign that you need to go and do this.
Oh, like I'm not going to go to Greece.
Yeah, you're like, okay.
It was just a nice idea. I just wanted you to notice me. But now you've really noticed me. So I was like, oh, okay. Am I going to do this? And my head was spinning. I just got up at, like, you know that thing where you get a text and you just like, throw the phone. I got up out of my chair and I was like, I need to take a walk. And
Yeah,
I just
it's too
was like,
much.
am I going to do this? Like, you know, and it's just also at that particular time, all the stuff, you know, the war in the Ukraine was kicking off and all that sort of thing. You were about to go to Greece on your honeymoon. Soon to be crashed by me for a couple of days. But
Surprise!
yeah, but I was sort of like, is this the right time? Should I be doing this? I don't know. And I remember talking to you and it's like, you are so silly if you don't go.
Yeah.
Because how many opportunities do you get like this? And I always, one of my things on my bucket list was to do an art residency in Greece. So Dad's Greek, have that connection back to the motherland. But yeah, and I just was like, it's cheap, like it's cheaper to go in June, like it's you can go and do that and come back. And my goal was to do a exhibition. So I wanted to do an exhibition that year. So anyway, I went and I was like, well, there's a few friends going. I'm just going to make a bit of a holiday out of it and then also go and do something that's will be incredible. And I think it was mostly because at the residency, it was all about just inspiration and, you know, going and meeting people. You never know who you're going to meet. And it was just amazing. Like we went to Idra, this little island about an hour south of Athens. And it was the Jeff Koons opening of the Apollo, the big sun on the side of the cliff. And it was like all the Greek glitterati. And I'm like, what?
You're like, oh, I've made it in Greece.
I know.
Gonna be a Neos Cosmos
I was
over
just
here
hanging at the back, like eating all the euros in the pot. I'm like, oh, I better go check out the art gallery. But it was amazing just to be seeing, you know, and overseas, and you know, you haven't travelled for so long through COVID and all that sort of stuff. It was like, I think that was the main thing I was nervous about. I was like, this was the start of 2021. I was like, oh, like.
Still a bit like on edge.
Yeah.
Like you don't really know what life is going to be like in 2021.
And then you get over there and you're catching all the ferries and you're like, there is no social
you're like, the Greeks really don't care, do they?
But I think it's like you took a risk as well. Like, you know, you were fully in your own business at that point. You've been working just for yourself. And I think it comes back to the idea of when do you know how to put yourself first and put the dreams and the goals there as the priority versus okay, well, how am I going to make income and do I know how the next couple of months are going to pan out? And as a result of it, you got an amazing opportunity with a local, not like a local gallery, but also a local juggernaut in terms of art and that platform in Fenton Fenton. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so
exciting.
So from the residency, it was, and this is why, like this is for a whole nother time, but the manifesting thing is crazy. So at this art residency, at home, on my studio, my goals was like this, and this, and it was Fenton Fenton representation. And that was actually like 2 years ago. And I was like, eventually I want that to happen. Earlier in that year of 2022, was that last year?
Yeah,
yes.
I think it was last year.
Yeah, don't worry.
I
have to think about it.
Yeah.
A lot.
Exactly. I applied for their like Rising Stars, you know.
Yeah, their program for new artists.
Yeah, exactly. So I applied for that and didn't get it. And I was like, oh, damn. Anyway, moving along. After I did the residency, I had an idea of all the things I wanted to do. I cemented on that residency, like all the girls that I met, I'm still friends with. I'm going to catch up with them this year in
That's
Europe.
so nice.
And they're just the best. And we were doing this sort of exercise where we're just holding space for each other and what we want. And I'm like, I want to have a gallery approach me or, you know, get back to me and just be like, we want to support your vision. Literally that afternoon, because I applied for the Brunswick Street Gallery spot, I got an email back and it was like, you have got this spot. And I was like, oh my God, it's worked. Anyway, and I had an idea, and that's when I was like, I want to have the row, like a wall of suns and just all the different things. And that's what I did at that exhibition. And from that, because sometimes I think it's like, you're like, oh, why am I not getting the opportunities when I've got all this and this? But sometimes, like even for me, and even social media, you put out a few things and people aren't seeing it all the time. But I had all this in my mind of like what I could see and what I want to do. I'm like, I need to put it out there. So every step out of my brain and put it on the walls and people can see, wow, that's what you're capable of.
Yeah.
And that's what your vision is. It's coming to life because I'm a very imaginative person and I'm a very like, I see it in my head and I'm like, yeah, I can see it.
How do I bring it to the, I think one of the best things that you said and one of the biggest takeaways I think everyone can take away from what you've said is goals. Like you keep talking about goals, you keep going back
Yeah.
to goals. I think the clarity that you had of your goals is something that is like incredible, because I think one thing that you've stayed true to, it's like when anything, whether you've got decisions to make, forks in the road, whatever's happening coming on your way, whenever you've thought about, you're like, okay, but wait a minute, let's go back.
Yeah.
What do I want? I want lifestyle. I want this. I want this. I want to be able to do this. And you've made that really clear so that it helps all these decision making. Decision making is so hard, but you've kind of taken out that hard barrier because you've made it quite clinical, and you're like, no, this is what I really want. These are my goals. I really believe in this. Are these aligning with it? No. Okay, well then I have to go with this one.
Yeah. And I think if you're a person that wants to work on something on the side or whatever it is, if you love it enough to work on it after hours, it's your baby, you're going to be looking after it late at night, doing those emails, research. And at some points you're like, oh, I can't be effed doing that or whatever. But there's some parts where you're like, I can't wait to get in. Oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. Oh, shit, I should go to bed. It's like 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it's finding that balance. But if you kind of – and that's why I think the whole freelance thing is so interesting, because it can look really like, oh, you can do whatever you want, or you make your own time. And that absolutely is true.
Yeah.
But it can go the other way too. And you're like, I can't do that because I've got a client doing this and I really like –
it can look glamorous, but the other side of it is like it was yesterday, I picked up a phone call when I was at the gym, and someone said to me like, oh, you're lucky. It's like at 10 a.m. and you're at the gym on a Tuesday, whatever it was. And I was like, yeah, but I was also on calls until 10:30 last night. So I'm lucky,
it comes
but
out in
I'm
the
like,
wash
it's like, I get where you're coming from, but the life
You're
of
borrowing
freelancer,
hours somewhere.
it's like you still got to do the work, you still got to do the hours, regardless of what you do. Even if you see online what you said before about like social media, you see online some people like 3-hour work week. All I have to do is do like 2 hours a day, and I'm like,
and then they jump out like a parachute out of the plane. You're like, cool, man, I want to do that.
That's awesome. But like, it's just like the reality of it is, especially when you're building a business, and regardless of the business, like our businesses are very different, but when you're building a business, you don't have the luxury of that. You've got to really just grind, and you've got to go back to what you love. You're right. If you're not thinking about it before you go to bed in an exciting way, not in an anxious way, in like this would be cool. This would be cool.
Yeah, like
this would be cool.
Possibilities of all that. And I think it's sometimes it might need to take a little bit of a backseat to, I need to work and do this for a bit of extra income until I can afford to do that. Or maybe I can't, like I'm a perfectionist. So it can be really challenging in some ways. I'm like, I want to do it exactly how I want to do it. And it's like, well, hold on. If you want to like doing it a little bit dialed down, it's still better than not doing it at all. So
Done is better
I've
than
learned from my
perfect.
friends.
Yeah, that's the one.
please stop and let it go.
So then that's when the Fenton Fenton thing. So in terms of putting out the creative vision for one exhibition, which was Brunswick Street Gallery has like a lot of emerging artists.
Yeah.
So I'd done that. I'd done the paid posts, and I just went, I'm just going to smash this across everyone's feed. Put paid posts on there. Fenton Fenton saw it, and they got in contact with me. And then they were like, we love what you've done, blah, blah, blah.
Goodness.
And then they were like, let's do an exhibition for them. And I'm like, cool. I'll just keep working it. And it was amazing. And I loved doing that. And I thrive in chaos.
Yes.
Kate always says that to me. But sometimes it's like if you've got ideas and you're building momentum, just let them
go for
snowball.
it. Keep going.
Yeah, exactly. And then take a break.
Yeah.
You can crash a bit after it, but you do thrive in chaos. So I think aside from living chaotically, you're a freelancer and you're an artist. Do you have any advice for other people who are looking to be in a freelance space or own their own business or anything like that, like how people can progress in this area? Do you have any advice for that?
I think especially like creatively, create what you want and what the vision you have. And even if you're doing a little bit every day or you set aside a day, however in whatever way makes you work best, I would do that, because it's the same as what I said before, even if you're not doing it the 100%, do it the 90 or the 80, which goes against my being to say, but it is true, because then you can always do it again better. And then the more you're doing, the better you're getting. Because sometimes I'm like, I just want to do all my sketches perfectly before I get it on the canvas, because, I want to make sure. And that's the beauty of how my artwork has changed. I used to do very precise, minimal, fine lines, maps with every location has to be accurate.
My
and
goodness.
so much research into it, which I love that. I loved looking into all these different places and the spelling of all the places and all that. But if I stuffed it up, start again.
Yeah.
While with the canvases, it's so much looser. It's actually more how I am as well, because I'm a pretty fly by the seat of my pants kind of person.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But it also was good for me as a perfectionist to go, just put the paint on the canvas
Yeah.
and just have fun.
Go
in with the plan of what you think, but if it's not perfect, that's kind of the beauty of what it is as well. Like,
Yeah.
it's part of the inspiration, because the inspiration is, you know, those old murals when you're traveling, and they're kind of
Oh, they're
Yeah.
gorgeous. We're
best
definitely going to be
coffee in the world. And you're like,
Okay,
that's
sure.
sure. Or it's half worn off, or, you know, something's not quite right. Like, that's all that is part of the beauty, and that's what I wanted this to be. But in terms of, so for the advice for people, just do a little bit. Keep the momentum, because it's hard, like, and I'm not great at this. Like, you go super hard and then you burn out and everything. But a little bit as every day or every couple of days, and like, even if you're just starting something with your references or whatever, it's better than not doing it. And then work, even if you need to have something on the side, whether it is you're at a bar or whatever it is, as long as it's helping support your other dream, which if you're like, this is going to go somewhere, then do it.
Yeah, that's a
don't
really
feel
good piece. Yeah, it's a really good piece of advice. I was listening to a podcast yesterday about that, and it was like talking about, you know, when's the right time to leave your job. Essentially, that was the whole
so hard.
basis of it. And I was like, this is so interesting. I probably should have listened to this before I left my job, but it is what it is. Like, but it was really interesting because what it kind of spoke about was the main thing is just you can do calculated risks.
Yes.
So like leaving your job is always going to be a risk, regardless of whether you've gone into a new job or not. Like, it's always going to be a risk. But it was just about calculating your risk so that you're not distracted when you're going into this new role. So, for example, in your example, it's like have that cash built up so that maybe potentially from a bar job or something that might not necessarily need to use like that mental capacity that you need for that particular role. Like, if it's something that's more hands based, it's like, okay, cool, I'm not having to use that part of my brain, so I can kind of relax it, save it for when I get home. But then you've got that cash, because the worst thing that you can do, or one of the bad things you can do, is when you do leave it, then you're like stressed about money. So it's like, oh no, I don't have money. Now what? Because then you don't have that creative freedom. You're too busy trying to like get those quick wins and get those quick cash jobs,
and
which isn't what you did. You did the opposite. You're like, nah, I've got to find both. I've got to find a way to be relaxed during this.
And that's exactly right. It's the calculated risk. It's like, okay, because I knew probably 6 months before, I was like, or maybe 3 or 4 months, I was probably going to leave. And I was sort of like, I could stay. And I'm like, but I'm getting drawn. And I was in a position, like, this is when I was living in Victoria. I was in a position where I was like, I've got, 6 months worth of work. That's an awesome spot to be in. So honour it and do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to lose these jobs. And I sort of saved, and I had that in mind. And I'm like, I want to have this amount, or, I do it until, work until you don't physically have the time anymore, because the other thing that you're doing is growing. Yeah. Because if it's not quite, you don't want to take the cake out before it's ready yet.
Yeah, that's the thing. And some people do it. They're like,
fun little analogy.
Yeah, like that. Like, off we go. But it's kind of like, oh, then you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, that's the thing. You just want to make sure you can do both. And that was the really interesting thing that I learned from that. And what you're saying kind of cements that. It's kind of like, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. You can do both. You can work on your side hustle if that's something that you're really passionate about as well, on the side.
So many people are doing that now
as
well.
Yeah.
So many, like, even when I went for that interview, like, in 2021, they're like, do you have a side hustle?
Oh, really?
Like, in the thing.
Yeah,
part of the interview process.
genuinely want to know
You're like,
that as well.
Do I say yes? No.
Yeah. No.
I don't know. Would it be a good
Take
thing?
all my
I don't know.
artwork down.
Yeah.
Where are you right now?
I hate art. No, I feel like people are more encouraging of it these days, because I think a lot of the time, sometimes side hustles, like, there's people that have hobbies. I know this hobby's a thing.
Yeah,
I don't have a hobby. I don't even think I have a hobby. I think side hustles are, in that sense, a bit of a hobby, and you turn that into like something that you really enjoy doing, and it's something that kind of takes your brain away from the day a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like can be a creative outlet. And I think sometimes that's the interesting thing with the side hustle thing, because I remember seeing this on a gallery, like a Q&A that they'd done, this New York gallery, and it was saying how often, because they were like, oh, someone wrote in and said, oh, do you take full-time artists or people that do it on the side? And they said, we take both. Like, often people that do it on the side, they're painting in their own time, they're creating what they love, and not for the money. So they're not being swayed. And it's obviously not to say all full-time artists are doing it for money. Everyone's doing it for whatever purpose they want, and there's amazing artists obviously full-time. But it's just an interesting one because I was like, yeah, it gets to a point maybe when you're kind of like, as a side hustle, you can do that and you can sit in that space of going, yep, I've got my bread and butter, but this is my creative outlet that I get to choose the jobs I want or whatever I want to create without potentially diluting it down to fit in a box to make quick cash or whatever.
Yeah. No, I understand. That's kind of the WIBs was born to an extent. Like it was when Pen and I were probably feeling the most like overwhelmed work-wise and just feeling a bit like, oh, okay, things are happening. We can't control it. What do we do? And then we're like, okay, well, what do we like doing? Yeah. And it's chatting and talking and being able to chat to beautiful people like yourself and just hear stories. And I think you learn so much from other people's stories. And I think we don't really ever realize just how much we've done until you kind of say it out loud and you're like, well, that's my story. Like I did all that. So it's so nice to have you here and for you to be able to say all of that. Because I think that putting it all into like one chunk, it's like, well, you've done so much. Like you've done so much.
And she's flipped and flopped around a little bit. But it's also, I mean, some people, they go out and they do it, they nail it all in the first go, or they have their failures or whatever it is. And, I think things happen in different ways and different timelines for everyone. Someone might, and even for myself, I got a graphic design job pretty much straight away. Like some friends didn't do it as much. And I was like, wow, I feel really lucky. Yeah. Then later I was like, oh, I'm getting out now. Yeah. And doing this. Yeah. And even that was hard, that same thing with that freelance, ebb and flow of money through COVID and all those things that are so testing to a freelancer and everyone, of course. But, and then some people might take a little bit longer and then they go, yep, I've got the job that I'm going to be in from this age on. And there's just no perfect time. I think it's whatever's good for you and comes up in your life anyway. So
it's like you wish you could just give your like 18-year-old self a hug and be like, it's actually going to be okay. Don't stress. Like it's actually going to be fine. Don't stress. Don't put all this pressure on yourself. Like what you said before about how you went into TAFE and then into uni. I remember like when it was like exam time and I was so stressed about like my ATAR score and I was like, oh my God, what if I don't get into uni, I'm not going to get a job. And it's like, what am I doing with my degree right now? Absolutely nothing. You're doing a podcast. You're doing something with it. But and that's similar to what you said before. It's like, yes, you might not have got into that uni thing that you wanted straight away, but you found a way to do it and who cares? You're where you are now because of what you've done anyway. So it doesn't really matter the journey. It's just the end result.
Exactly.
Speaking of your 18-year-old self, I think that if you had to kind of summarize it or give one piece of advice to little junior Adrianne out in the world, sort of thinking about what she wanted to do, or anyone who's, I guess, at that point in their career, what advice would you give?
18-year-old Dimmy or person. I think don't be too hard on yourself and just keep going. And I think one of the things that I've probably learnt, especially being an artist and having, like, I've been just emailing, blasting so many galleries because I want to do an exhibition at the end of the year or in the new year. And I've just been like, yep, I want to do it. So I've just been going hammer and tongue emailing everyone. And some galleries go, hey, we do more landscape, so you're probably not the best fit for us, but good luck. And I think as you get on, you go, oh, yeah, cool. Or some people might not reply to you and you go, that's okay. Because I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is if it doesn't happen at a particular time, it's maybe not the right time, but doesn't mean it's not the right time later. And that's why I think with the Fenton Fenton thing was interesting because it was a 10-month delay, period of when I applied, I didn't get it. But then I got something even better than I thought I could get 10 months later because I went and I really had to do all the things and want it and grow and whatever it is.
Trust the process.
Yeah, trust the process and don't be afraid to introduce yourself. Build the confidence up in yourself. Go and say hi to people. Go and introduce yourself. If you want to be an artist, go to galleries and go, hey, can you tell me about this artwork? I really want to do this. What do I have to do to get in here? Yeah. And I think I used to feel so stupid for going into a gallery and introducing myself and feeling so nervous, but they're so appreciative. Or they might not be. You might go into someone and they're thinking, and then you go, that's okay. It's not the right
It's not my vibe. Yeah.
It's not the right fit. And my art is going to do better with someone who goes, I fucking love this.
Yeah.
And that's what actually what a psychic said to me. She's like, you're going to either good art either pisses people or, they don't like it and they think this is crap or they love it.
Yeah.
And I kind of was like, that's really interesting because I think as a creative person, you want everyone to like your things.
Yeah.
But if you stay kind of authentic to you and what you want to create, then who cares what?
Yeah.
Yeah. And not everyone's going to like it.
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
true.
life.
And I'd rather
Yeah.
find the niche that love it than
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
oh, yeah, it's kind of cool. Like more people going, oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah. You can't be all
You'd
things to all
rather-
people,
exactly.
literally.
100%. So
Awesome. Okay, so
Yeah.
so final question, what is on the horizon? What's coming up?
what's on the horizon? So in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to Europe. So I'm
Fun.
going to be floundering around with Penny in Sardinia for a week.
so jealous.
And to her husband, of course.
Oh,
But, you know,
Lammy.
the three of us.
Yeah.
So I'm going to Europe. I'm going to take a little bit of time off. I really want to explore, and I'm going to meet up with other friends and everything, and travel. And there's an art fair over there that I want to go and visit. So I'm kind of just want to reconnect the inspiration and all that. And then I'm going to be launching the next batch of silk scarves and sarongs. So
I can't
I'm going to
wait.
shoot that in Europe, and then it'll all sort of come together. And then there's a collab that will launch with a clothing apparel later this year. So
This is so exciting. I can't wait. We're going to put all your details in show notes, links, Instagram, everywhere in life. You guys have to see these. Like, they are absolutely stunning. I remember I think the first time I'd seen it was when you went up for your honeymoon and you're wearing this rug, and I was like, what is that beautiful thing that
It's
you have
art.
on your
It's
body?
wearable
Like,
art.
it was
Wearable art.
incredible. And then you told me, I was like, no way did you do that. And I couldn't believe it. And then I just went to this like wormhole of just stalking everything that you do. And I was like, this is incredible. It was so
Stalk
nice.
away.
Yeah, it was really, really lovely. So yeah, everyone stalk, please.
So we will pop all of the links in our show notes, and if you go to my Instagram, it's basically like an Adrianne.
dedication page.
Literally, it's that, the WIBs and Mac Mortgages. Shout out to
Yeah.
those three, and then this is my life now. But thank you so much for being on today. We always gonna love having you here. We knew this was going to be great, and
We manifested this.
we manifested it. We're like, we will
Put it
get
on your
her
vision
in.
board. I'll be there.
You were on our vision board. We
Just
started
me,
doing
like,
it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening. We're going to have heaps of more guests coming on the show, which is really, really exciting. It's something that we've been wanting to do for a while, but we just needed the right space. And thank you to This Is a Studio for providing
Yes,
that.
I know,
Yeah,
because
it's
we
amazing.
couldn't bring them into our
little hot box.
our little hot box dungeon recording studio. But now
I want to go to that one.
I don't know if
I
you do.
thrive in the
No, you
tropics.
don't.
You do.
No, you don't.
Your upper lip sweat on camera is not a great
Oh
look.
yeah,
Trust
maybe
me.
just put the Vaseline sheen over the top.
Getting really weird in here now. But thank you so much for being on today. And we will be in your ears again next week with another fantastic episode. But until then, please rate, review, subscribe, and go check out Atlas the Collective. We'll be putting the links on our show notes.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.